Thank you, Mr. Fetterman. And while I like your ideas on SSI, Mr. Diamond, I need to think more about FDIC. Senator Warnock from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chair. Before I get to the question that I set out to ask, I have to respond to the senator from Ohio, not the chair, who apparently takes great umbrage to the words or the letters sent by the leaders of these institutions responding to the voter suppression bill that was passed in Georgia. I know a little something about voter suppression in Georgia. Today is, in fact, the one-year anniversary of my election in Georgia. But my election should not give people the false impression that there's no voter suppression in Georgia. It should not give us any misunderstanding about how bad a law SB 202 actually is. In fact, I had to sue the state of Georgia because at the beginning of my runoff a year ago, they decided that folks wouldn't be able to vote the first Saturday of the runoff, claiming that this was the clear letter of the law. You couldn't vote a couple of days after a holiday, that holiday being Thanksgiving, and a day that used to honor the anniversary of Confederate General Robert E. Lee. And so I had to sue them and then appeal again and again just so Georgia voters could vote. So I think that people in your position do have a corporate responsibility, and I hope you will certainly feel the freedom to lean in the places and the spaces where it's necessary. And in that vein, I want to ask you about the Safer Banking Act, legislation recently considered by this committee on cannabis banking. Many of your banks have lobbied for this bill, and the American Bankers Association, of which you all are members, supports the bill as well. I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you support the Safer Banking Act. None of you support the Safer Banking Act.
Chair.
I'm going to ask you a question. Raise your hand if you support the Safer Banking Act.
Senator, we all support the intent of it. The problem is it doesn't fix the problem, and that's it. So don't take our non-essentials.
Let me ask my next question. Please, raise your hand if you believe passing the Safer Banking Act will reduce the racial wealth gap. So this is interesting, and so we should have some conversation about this. The American Bankers Association, of which all of you are a part, writes that this legislation will provide, quote, legal and regulatory clarity for banks, and it would help facilitate access to financial services. My question is legal and regulatory clarity for whom, and who are we making safer? Since the war on drugs began over 50 years ago, communities across America have been decimated. They've been hollowed out. Communities all across our country in the wake of the explosion of mass incarceration, making us the mass incarceration capital of the world. Missing bodies and abandoned buildings. The war on drugs has been a war on communities of color. I want to be clear that I am open to safer banking and more regulatory clarity around cannabis, but my fear is that if we pass this bill right now, then your banks and other powerful voices will be missing in action when it comes time to address the broader harms of the war on drugs. And so I support safer banking. You all seem reluctant to say whether you support it or not. I'm concerned about equity and whether we will get that in the process. So let me ask you this. Will each of you commit to ensuring your banks will uphold the standards that would, standards in the Community Reinvestment Act, that is, which we'll soon have another opportunity to address. Will you support standards to increase equity as we move forward perhaps on safer banking. Mr. Scharf?
Yes, Senator.
Mr. Monahan?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Diamond?
Yeah, we support the intent, but I would have to see the actual words and the actual law.
Would you support efforts to be intentional about supporting equity and addressing the awful impact of 40 years of the war on drugs, which in many ways has been a war on black and brown communities?
Yes, but I would, before I agree to something, I like to see the actual detail down to the last word. Okay.
Mr. Frazier? Ms. Frazier, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think similar to Mr. Diamond, absolutely support the intent. The details matter. We'd look at it and work with your office if we had concerns.
Mr. O'Handley?
We support the intent.
Mr. Vance?
Similar to my colleagues, we would want to see the detail.
Mr. Solomon?
I would want to understand the detail more. We will continue to do things to support investment in underserved communities.
Exactly the
Foreman.
same.
Thank you so very much. I think this is critical. There's nothing in history that suggests to me that if we leave behind these communities that are marginalized, as we make banking safer for powerful banks and people in positions who sit here and who sit there, there's nothing in history that suggests to me that we're going to go back and get those folks. And so I hope that I can continue to engage you and that as good corporate responsible citizens, you will take an active interest in this, recognizing that it's not only the right thing to do for the future of our economy, it's the smart thing to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Warnock, and thank you for setting the record straight on the Georgia election law.
Thank you.